This is a Powerworks podcast short with Glenn Power and me, James Pikeway.
You know, interesting one when you talk about coolant is we've got the auxiliary tank where, and it's got a max and a min level on it. And I was looking at my auxiliary tank and it was in the right level, so it was fine. Actually, I topped it up a little bit. But I'm looking out the back at the overflow. And I'm thinking there must be times when engines get really warm and that tank is to the brim.
Yep.
And it's spewing out into the engine bay, right? And I'm looking at where the tap is. I'm going, it's right on the belts.
Excellent, yeah.
I mean, who designed it? Because I'm thinking that, if I've got Prestone coming out onto my, fan belt and alternator and all that stuff, all these belts, that's not good.
No, absolute nightmare. Worst case scenario. I like to think that somebody did think about that and thought, well, we'll do this so that the driver will be alerted to the belt noise.
Yeah.
But I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No.
It's a good idea, though.
But,
suddenly your car's going to be squealing.
Right. I mean, the other problem with that is, so on the system, so there's two, and I don't like that system, but there's two systems on, more common systems, shall we say, on engine cooling. Both of them are pressurized. The one you're talking about is where you have a pressurized cap on the top of the radiator.
Right.
And then there's an overflow past the pressure valve. So if the pressure valve opens, the water's able to go into the overflow catch tank. And then because the pressure differential, as it cools down, it sucks it back. Now, when you open that kind of system on the radiator cap, those caps are a few dollars each. They're not expensive.
Yeah.
Some of them hold up to 1.5, 2 bar. Some of them are really quite powerful on their spring and their valve. But it's a very cheap, mass-produced part that not only can it break very easily, but it can be fitted so wrong.
Yeah.
And if you leave that fitted wrong or it breaks, there's no pressure able to build up. So the water just constantly goes to its lowest pressure point, which is the expansion tank.
Yeah.
And you will drain an engine very, very quickly in that condition. Water boils at 100 degrees at atmospheric pressure at sea level.
Yeah.
But an engine needs a coolant not to boil, but it gets over 100 degrees. So that's the reason for pressure. It raises the boiling point, and then you add coolant additive, which raises it a little bit more. But at 103, 105 degrees C, under pressure, it's okay. Yeah. But if you release that pressure, it will boil, and when it boils, it will boil off, and you will lose a massive, massive quantity of coolant just on a 10-mile journey.
And that's where you see when people blow something that's, the steam that's coming out.
You can literally lose an engine and a transmission because of how transmissions are cooled these days, because of a small pressure valve in a cap. Now, the other system, which is the more, maybe a bit unfair to say, but the more modern system, which doesn't have a pressure cap on the radiator, there's just pressurized expansion tank. Pressurized, shouldn't really call it reservoir, actually, it's not an expansion tank, which is the highest point of the system where you fill the coolant, you have a level, and that's pressurized. There's a pressurized cap. Now, when that pressure valve fails, it's the same thing, but the water just escapes, doesn't go anywhere, and it will flicker, open and close, open and close. Now, sometimes they will fail. Customers will say, we have a coolant leak. The coolant, we're having to top it up every couple of weeks. The only way to pressurize the system is to open the cap and pressurize it from the bottle. Now, the cap's now been removed. We've got 2 bar of pressure on the system and nothing's leaking. It's been there for 3 hours and not leaked. The pressure's been perfectly well maintained. Put the cap back on, they come back because there's an issue with the cap. So in that instance, we always say, because of the inexpensive nature of the part, we haven't found a leak here, engine hot, engine cold. We're going to change the cap. It's not like it's a bad thing to change anyway. And just as a caveat, we've just pressurized your system for an extended period of time, not found a leak. But if there's something that was starting to weaken, it may have been aggravated by what we've done, and you need to keep an eye on the level and anything dripping out underneath. Coolant's a bad one because it's hot, the engine's hot, the radiator's hot, there's fans blowing, it evaporates very quickly.
Yeah.
So it is a difficult one to sometimes trace. But if you've got the right concentration of additive, you'll see a residue.